Oh my god. These books do not pass the vibe check. At least I actually did enjoy one of these, but I feel like I won't be saying that a lot considering the books I have left on this list. Before we continue, I will be throwing up yet another trigger warning for basically the whole video we will be discussing and more. The books in question are To Kill a Mockingbird by Harper Lee, and making her second appearance in this series is Margaret Peterson Haddix with her book Don't You Dare Read This, Miss Dunphrey. Yes, I am aware I said Patterson instead of Peterson in the last one, but I also said penguin when I meant pigeon in the first video, so leave me alone. I make mistakes too. So let's not focus on my inability to do anything correctly, and let's talk about To Kill a Mockingbird. Published in 1960 and until 2016 was actually Harper Lee's only book, To Kill a Mockingbird was praised for its ability to discuss tough topics such as racism, racial inequality, and gender norms in the South. It was subject to a lot of censorship, and a censored version was actually released for a lot of schools. I believe I read the uncensored version. Considering the amount of N-words I read, I believe I read the uncensored version, but if I didn't, I don't want to. Let's proceed. The perspective of this book is a little weird for me. The book is written from the perspective of a 6-year-old girl named Jean Louise, but she does go by Scout. But the book is mostly about her father, Atticus. I guess there's a lot of what you want to call padding in this book. It's about Scout talking about her day-to-day life before the central focus of the novel occurs. It was literally just her talking about how much she hates school, playing with her brother and her friends, stuff like that. So I won't really dive into it because it's, well, boring. Moving on, the central focus of this book surrounds Atticus, who is a white lawyer defending a black man named Tom Robinson accused of, and Atticus says that he has to defend this man because he believes crucifying him because he is black is wrong. Even though he doesn't think he'll win the case, he honestly didn't think he'd be able to live with himself if he didn't try. As a result of Atticus's dedication to the case, others in town start to pick on the kids. They're attacking the kids because their father is Atticus is defending his client in court, and for some reason Scout, Jem, and their friend Dill are there. Did courts really allow kids in during the 30s? Whatever, I'm not dwelling on it. The kids are watching the trial. Atticus is questioning the victim, and it's so obvious to everyone that she's lying. So he is questioning her about the events, and she is not giving clear answers. She's backpedaling. Atticus does get her to admit that her left-handed father had a bad drinking habit. The left-hand bit is important because she has injuries to the right side of her face. Tom Robinson has a bad arm, which would make it extremely difficult, borderline impossible, to attack somebody in the way that she said he did. And guess which arm is his bad one? And despite the evidence, Tom Robinson is convicted of the assault of Mayella Ewell. You'd think that would be the end of it, right? Wrong. Life goes on in the town of Macomb, and that is until news spread that Tom Robinson tried to escape from prison and was killed as a result. I don't believe it. But don't worry, the book still isn't over. Bob Ewell, the father of the girl who accused Tom of assault, is a fucking lunatic. He's heated at Atticus for embarrassing his ass in court, accusing him of beating his daughter and using Tom to cover it up, which is exactly what happened. But he got away with it. So apparently having an innocent man sentenced to death wasn't enough for him. He had to make his embarrassment everyone else's problem. He spat on Atticus, followed Tom's widow around, making her uncomfortable. He even threatened the judge of the case as well. Why are you acting like this, motherfucker? You won. Unfair, yes, but you won. Being as Atticus didn't give not one fuck about this man, Bob targets something that he knows will affect Atticus. His kids. So as Jem and Scout are walking home from a pageant at the school, they are attacked. Both retain minor injuries, and Jem has a broken arm. It turns out that a local introvert named Arthur Radley, who's also known as Boo Radley, saves the kids and took the unconscious Jem back to his home. Boo is casually mentioned throughout the book. He's a man known for not leaving his house in the last couple of decades. Fair. And he is also known for leaving little trinkets in a tree for Jem and Scout to find. And that's it. Honestly, this book is a little confusing. Even after reading it 3 times for this video, I still couldn't fully understand this book. It may be the fact that it was published over 60 years ago, but I just don't get it. Why is a book more or less centered around a racist trial written from the perspective of the lawyer's kid? Why is this book padded with so much of nothing? Why do we need to know how the people of this town operate in great detail? All you need to do is say they're racist, and that's all we need to know. I'm 100% okay with admitting that maybe I'm just not getting it. However, I also want to ask a question. To Kill a Mockingbird is considered a great American read. Is it considered a great American read because of how many people have read it? If so, the claim is then biased, because as this series suggests, this book was forced upon me in school, and a lot of other students across a lot of schools. And to this day, it's still an assigned book in most schools across the country. So I ask you, do you think To Kill a Mockingbird is actually a good book? Or are we all conditioned to think so because we were forced to read it because we were told it was good? Yes, literature is subjective, but in the words of the great Randy Feltface,
taste is so subjective. You know, one man's To Kill a Mockingbird is another man's Twilight Saga.
Honestly, I could rant about how much this book confuses me all day, but we got another book to discuss. Don't You Dare Read This by Mrs. Dunphrey is interesting for a number of reasons to me. A teacher assigns her students a journal that they have to write in. However, if the students don't want the teacher to read a particular journal entry, all they have to do is write, "Don't read this, Mrs. Dunphrey." The book is written as the journal. The chapters are the entries the protagonist is submitting to her teacher. Our protagonist is a 16-year-old high school student by the name of Tish. Her journal entries seem pretty basic at the beginning, gossiping, talking about her friends, her little brother. It doesn't stay basic. The entries labeled for the teacher not to read contain her real thoughts and events that occur. For example, a much older manager at her job asking her out, and by much older, she describes him as old as her dad. Or how her father is mean and abusive, with a mother being too quote-unquote wimpy to do anything about it. When her father does come back after leaving for 2 fucking years, her little brother and mother act like everything is fine, and Tish is the only skeptical one. Unfortunately, she does end up being correct in being skeptical of the situation, as her father reverts back to his old ways of verbal and physical abuse. Thus, the cycle continues. Dad abuses family, dad leaves, dad comes back, everyone but Tish acts like everything is fine, dad abuses family, you get the point. As a result, we reach a bittersweet impasse with Tish. When she comes home to find that her mother is gone, she left a note telling Tish that she went to go find their father after he left again. So this woman left her teenage daughter home alone to raise her 8-year-old brother with a part-time job, no money, no knowledge on how to pay bills, and obviously this goes about as well as you'd expect. Bills are not getting paid, there is no food, her brother Matt is sick all of the time. As a result, she stops caring about school. However, she keeps writing in the journal because at this point it's all she's got. Mrs. Dunphrey, through both her notes written in the journal and conversations Tish writes about, we know that Mrs. Dunphrey is trying to get through to Tish, but Tish doesn't want anyone to know that her mom abandoned them. There's a tiny sliver of me that wants to feel bad for the mom. It's obvious that she herself was abused, but much like me and the dad from A Child Called It, I just want to talk to you. Aggressively. In the face. With a chair. Especially when the mom sends a fucking postcard saying she's on the beach in California with their dad and she's as happy as can be with plans on sending money. It's a lie. They are not happy, she never sends money. Their dad ran off with a 19-year-old and their mom doesn't want to admit that she fucked up again. So what happens with Tish now? Well, the power is shut off. Again, there's still no food, Matt is still sick. Tish ended up getting fired from her job, so there's now no money at all. Finally, out of options, she writes her final journal entry, telling Mrs. Dunphrey to read the entire journal. Obviously, Mrs. Dunphrey has to report the neglect. The cops track down their mom and their paternal grandparents, who thankfully are nothing like their father. The next thing we have is actually a letter that Tish wrote to Mrs. Dunphrey, basically explaining that Tish and Matt moved to California and were placed under the custody of said paternal grandparents. Dad is nowhere to be seen, and her mother is attempting to get her shit together. To date, this was the most difficult one to make. It took me longer than normal because I had to read To Kill a Mockingbird 3 times only to not fully understand it. And Don't You Dare Read This, Mrs. Dunphrey, though a very, very good book, is still soul-crushing to read. Now, the big question, do I think these books are age appropriate for 8th graders? Don't You Dare Read This, Mrs. Dunphrey, I am going to say yes. Before I answer on To Kill a Mockingbird, please know that my opinion is 100% extremely biased. That being said, no. I have been called the N-word enough times in my life that I don't need to read it in school, and I'm leaving it there. So don't forget to drink water and return to your library books on time, or else.
You do this! We've been together through everything! I took care of you! I love—
It's not what you think. Please.
You're cheating on me! With him?
No, Beast. I promise I'm not. I'm helping him. That's all.
I'll bet!